I've come here today to speak with you about creativity and education. So the first thing I'd like you to do is try a simple exercise. Try thinking about when you were in the 8th grade. Okay, I see a few of you are struggling with that. So let me give you a hint. Try imagining how creative you were or thinking about the decisions you were making. You see, the decisions that you make in the 8th grade are very important because they begin to shape the future that you will have as you go forward. I see most of you are arriving at that memory. Now, for a courageous few of you, I'd like you to think about 1966. That's when I was 14 years old and in the 8th grade. Okay, I see some of you trying to do the math. Just stop it. It was 50 years ago. When I was in the 8th grade, two events shaped the future of my life. The first was in the area of farming. I was learning what it meant to farm the land that I had been in my family for almost 150 years. And I joined 4-H to learn more about the animals that were on our land. And what you see here is the 1966 Reserve Grand Champion Shorthorn Division for the Alabama Livestock Exposition. I'm the one in the hat, by the way. I had selected that steer. I had trained that steer. I had fed that steer. I had demonstrated my showmanship, and I had won the title. And I want you to know that was one good-looking steer. At the same time, my science teacher, Ms. McFillin, approached me about entering a science fair. She said I was good in science and math and that I should give it a try. She thought I should think about a project around this new math called Boolean algebra. She said it's the way computers think. Now, I'm quite sure she expected that I would do some research, talk to some experts, and make a portfolio. However, I had learned that I'm a hands-on kind of guy, so rather than the more traditional approach, I built this. I found some switches off an old Trailways bus. I took a headlamp off an old tractor. I took a hand-crank generator out of an old hand-crank telephone, and with all that, I made a one-line computer. It solved a Boolean equation. If switch A and switch B are on, and either switch C or switch D is on, when you spin the crank, the light lights up. It was math. I won. And it was at that point that I came to understand two truths for my life. The first is that I had choices. I could be a farmer, but I could also be an engineer or a scientist. And as it turned out, I became an engineer, which was a really, really good decision because I hated finding, feeding, and fencing cattle. The second was the importance of 3 4-letter words: make, fail, and play. However, in the ensuing 50 years, these 4-letter words have become dirty little words in education. This is a complete mystery to me. You see, these words were at the heart of the creativity that characterized my success that year. When faced with the challenge of how to successfully raise an animal to a champion or build a one-line computer, my creative journey began in the hands-on physical world. Research tells us that much of our creativity is founded in this kinesthetic or hands-on world. Even as babies, we use our hands to explore and try to discover new and different ways of building things and searching out our environment. It's how we make sense out of the world. This idea was first codified by Seymour Papert. Papert, like Piaget, believed that we construct our knowledge through our experiences. Constructionism adds the idea that this happens particularly well when we build things in the physical world. What this meant for me is that what I made became what I understood. It was all about the process of making something. Okay, well, technically, I did not make the steer. I did make everything necessary for the steer to grow and to mature. So whether it's the study of science or animals or whatever children are studying, making is necessary for creative learning. However, making has all but disappeared from education, having been replaced by mindless drill and kill memorization. And this is stifling our children's creative potential. Research tells us that at 5 years old, almost 100% of children will test as creative geniuses. And after 20 years of the best education we can provide, only 3% of adults will test as creative geniuses. Imagine, just imagine what we could accomplish if we nurtured and fostered the creativity of our children throughout their entire educational experience, rather than systematically stamping it out with well-intentioned but almost meaningless testing and lecture. Making is at the heart of creative learning. In the process of making, I also learned a lot about failure. We've taken this word fail and we've made it a value-laden destination rather than an opportunistic journey to success. I had many failures raising and showing cattle and in making my one-line computer. My creative journey those failures shaped my future. And as I began to understand those failures, I began to understand the important truth that success doesn't happen on the way to success. It's mostly failure that happens on the way to success. In fact, one of the reasons education is largely ineffective is because we've taken the word fail and we've added it to our list of four-letter words. When in fact, children actually prosper and grow when they learn to fail and they learn through failure. As adults, our job is to create an environment where the cost of failure is low. In that way, children can be encouraged to fail and to learn through failure. It was, in fact, my failures that led me in the path of farming and engineering. It's not like that's the only thing I ever did. I tried the piano and I failed. I tried sports and I failed. I tried running the school newspaper and I failed. The point is, with each of these failures, I learned a little more about myself. And it was these insights, along with my successes, which shaped me into the adult that I am today. Most importantly, it taught me that failure is a step on the journey to success. It is not a destination. Now, before you conclude that I was a totally odd child who enjoyed failure, let me say that in most respects, I was pretty normal, except one. How many of you know what Tourette syndrome is? Good, I can see some of you do. Tourette syndrome is a neurologic disorder characterized by involuntary movements and vocalizations, tics. I have Tourette syndrome, as does my adult son, Ian. Many of you will know the syndrome by one of its most visible symptoms, coprolalia, the involuntary utterance of obscenities. I do not have that symptom. If I swear, I assure you, I mean it. Education, however, seems to have contracted that symptom. When we use the word play, we almost spit it out as an obscenity. Look at those children play. What a waste of time. Really? Really? Can we imagine a world without play? A world where conformity is rewarded and deviations are punished? A world where the product matters more than the process? A world where memorization is valued and creativity is denied. A world where children wait to be told what to do rather than decide how to do because they've never been told why to do. Many children call that world school. It's a difficult truth, but it's one we must confront. Even if we consider something like recess, while over 90% of elementary schools have some sort of recess, only 5 U.S. states have laws requiring recess, and only one of those states has a requirement that recess be 20 minutes a day. Sadly, since the 1970s, our children have lost over 12 hours of free time, with a 25% reduction in play and a 50% reduction in unstructured activity. This is truly remarkable. This is truly remarkable. Play has been seen to be critical for brain-based development. Play is tied to such learning milestones as logic and reasoning and interpersonal skills and empathy. And yet, we have reduced play and continue to reduce play and even eliminate it from some of our children's education. All the while, the educational establishment and us as parents is applauding, saying, good job, more study. But when you ask us, what we remember, when you ask us what impacted us the most about our education, we will say it was the teachers who were fun and interesting, who gave us activities that stretched us and allowed us to excel, the ones who allowed us to learn in a fun and engaging environment. It was play. So should we conclude that education is hopelessly broken? No, education is not broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. You may have heard that we treasure what we measure, and in education we have come to treasure a test score rather than actual learning. Consequently, while we have high school graduation rates above 80%, only 60% of them are prepared for college, and only 55% are prepared for employment. And the numbers are much, much worse for minorities and children from low socioeconomic status. No, no education is not broken. It's just not educating. It's measuring and labeling. And that's the problem. How can we expect to prepare children for the future if we cannot adequately prepare them for the present? By some estimates, over 65% of future jobs have not even been created yet. Ray Kurzweil reminds us of this fact when he says that progress in the 21st century will proceed at rates 1,000 times greater than the 20th century. This would be like building the Great Wall of China in 2 months rather than 200 years. For generations, we have been telling children to sit down and shut up. And now we wonder why they cannot stand up and speak with confidence to the challenges of the 21st century, much less overcome them. Today, we stand at the epicenter of a crisis in creativity, and we face this crisis having eliminated perhaps our most formidable weapon, play. It is when we are at play that we are the most creative. It is when we are at play that we are making and failing in the context of learning. It is when we are at play that we come to understand the importance of other four-letter words like grit, work, and life. I'm reminded of the story of Esau, who sold his birthright for a hot meal. Like modern-day Esau's, we have sold our children's birthright for a test score. We must reclaim this birthright for our children. We must equip all children to be successful in the 21st century. We must remake education so that it serves children and not its masters. But how? Well, that's obvious to any child who's ever heard this quote from Theodore Geisel. We know him as Dr. Seuss. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. We must care. We must care enough to remove the stigma from these four-letter words: make, fail, and play. For they hold the key to unlock the future of our children and transform their lives. We made education what it is today, and we can remake education through the power of these three simple words. But how, again, you may ask? Well, I don't know that I've got all those answers. But it seems simple enough to my granddaughter, who reaches up every Sunday, every weekend, and says, "Granddad, come play with me. Come play."